The sun dipped low behind the crimson hills, casting long shadows over Route 27 as a thunderous roar echoed through the valley. Rex Steele Murdoch, a towering figure wrapped in leather and sinew, carved through the dusk on his chrome beast, a custom Harley-Davidson fat boy with black flame paint and pipes that screamed rebellion. Tattoos crawled down his arms like vines, each symbol a story of fights, roads conquered, and borders crossed. Rex lived for the road. He didn't believe in much, not in God, not in love, and certainly not in fate. His faith lay in torque and traction, in the burn of whiskey and the loyalty of the few men who still rode with him. They called themselves the Steel Saints, a name that once held weight in biker circles from Arizona to Alberta. But today, Rex rode alone. He pulled off the road near an old barn, surrounded by golden fields, parched and dancing in the wind. Thirst gnawed at his throat, and a weather-worn sign promising fresh well water pointed down a dirt path. He killed the engine, silence crashing into the sudden stillness like a gunshot. He walked toward the barn, boots crunching gravel, when he heard it. A low snort, a shuffle of hooves. From the shadowed barn emerged a horse, big, brown, with a white blaze down its face. Its black eyes locked onto Rex, nostrils flared. Rex froze. A cold sweat prickled his neck. The beast was massive, taller than him, heavier primal. Every instinct screamed danger. He took a step back. The horse stepped forward. "Back off, glue stick," he muttered, forcing bravado into his voice. But inside, he was 8 years old again, watching helplessly as a stallion reared and threw his father during a rodeo in Amarillo. His father didn't survive. The fear never left. Now here it was again, rearing in his chest like the horse from his past. He turned to leave, but a creaky voice stopped him. "Ain't gonna hurt you. Not unless you turn your back like a coward." An old man, leaning on a cane, stepped out of the barn's doorway. Sunlight painted his face in orange streaks, revealing a weathered grin. "Name's Elijah, and that's Mercy," he said, jerking a thumb at the horse. Rex scoffed. "More like murder." Elijah chuckled. "Mercy's gentle. Just don't show her fear. Animals got a way of sniffing out lies." Rex didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed the offered water canteen and downed it greedily. "You running from something, son?" Elijah asked. "I don't run," Rex growled. Elijah just smiled and nodded slowly, like a man who'd heard that before. "Well then, maybe you're just headed toward something. Doesn't matter. Everything's part of the trail God sets." Rex almost choked on his laughter. "God, that your answer to everything?" Elijah shrugged. "It's mine. Don't have to be yours. But he gave us life, son. You ever stop and wonder why?" Rex looked at Mercy again. She pawed the ground, eyes soft now, unthreatening. Something inside him stirred, not quite peace, but a question, one he hadn't let himself ask in a long time. What am I really riding toward? As the sun vanished and the stars blinked into place, Rex didn't get back on his bike. He sat under the barn's awning with Elijah, watched the fireflies dance, and listened to stories about a world he'd long ignored. The road could wait. Tomorrow, maybe. He'd try to touch the horse. Dawn crept in slow, like a gentle tide washing over the land. The sky blushed in hues of pink and peach as dew clung to the grass. Rex stirred from his spot near the barn, a rough wool blanket over his shoulders. He hadn't intended to sleep there, but the quiet and Elijah's stories had rooted him deeper than any motel ever had. Mercy stood in the paddock now, chewing idly at a bale of hay. The distance between them was just 10 paces. Still, to Rex, it felt like crossing a minefield. Elijah stood nearby, whittling a piece of cedar. "You gonna stand there all morning, or you gonna say hello?" Rex scowled. "I don't talk to things that try to kill me." "She didn't try nothing." She just met a man who carries too much thunder in his chest. Rex didn't know how to argue with that. The truth stung. He took a step toward the paddock gate. Mercy's ears twitched. He paused. Another step. Her head lifted, watching. Memories surged. His father's scream. The sickening thud. Blood in the dirt. His fists clenched. But Elijah's voice cut through the storm. You want to hold onto that pain, or let the light in. Your choice. Rex grunted. The words were soft, but they landed heavy. He unlatched the gate. One hinge squealed. Mercy didn't bolt. He stepped in. One pace. Then another. His boots sank slightly into the earth. The air smelled like hay, dust, and something ancient, life maybe. He extended his hand. Mercy didn't move. Another step. Now they were face to face. Her eyes, deep, liquid, knowing, studied him. His fingers trembled, an echo of the boy he used to be. But then contact. He touched her muzzle. Warm, silky, alive. A shiver passed through him like lightning. Not fear. Something else. Something sacred. You did good, Elijah said from behind the fence. Rex exhaled, long and low. Felt like I just shook hands with God. Elijah nodded. He shows up in strange ways. Sometimes on 4 wheels. Sometimes on 4 legs. That day passed in slow rhythms. Rex helped muck the stalls. Work that blistered the hands and calmed the mind. Elijah showed him how to saddle a horse, how to read the twitch of an ear or the flick of a tail. They ate a simple meal, beans, bread, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. That night, under a blanket of stars, Rex didn't think about the open road. He thought about how Mercy had leaned into his touch by dusk, how Elijah had let him groom her mane. He thought about the silence between breaths, about peace, a word he hadn't trusted in years. He looked at the moon and whispered, not to anyone in particular, maybe there's more to this. Elijah, still whittling, didn't look up. There is. You just gotta stay long enough to see it. Rex leaned back and let the night hold him. Rex woke before the sun. The barn was still wrapped in shadows, the crisp morning air thick with the smell of hay and damp earth. A rooster crowed in the distance, echoing across the fields. He sat up, rolled his shoulders, and looked toward the paddock. Mercy stood like a statue, steam curling from her nostrils. He dressed slowly, pulling his leather vest over a faded thermal shirt. The Harley stood where he'd left it, parked under a sycamore tree, like a sleeping giant. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the tug of the road. Instead, he felt the pull of something else, something quieter, something heavier. He found Elijah already awake, sitting by the well with a chipped mug in hand. "Mornin'," Elijah said, nodding. Rex grunted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Didn't think I'd still be here." "Most don't. That's how healing works. It sneaks up on you." Rex eyed the old man. "What makes you think I'm healing?" Elijah sipped his coffee, then looked out across the field. "'Cause you're asking questions you never asked before, and you're not trying to outrun the answers." Rex didn't respond, but his silence wasn't the same kind of silence he used to carry. It wasn't cold, it wasn't empty. It was thoughtful. By mid-morning, they saddled Mercy. Elijah insisted that if Rex was going to stay another day, he'd need to ride. Rex balked at first, the old fear flaring up, but Elijah was patient. "You already made peace once," Elijah said. "Now it's time to ride with it." The saddle creaked under Rex's weight as he mounted. Mercy shifted beneath him, but she didn't spook. She seemed to accept him, as if the bond they'd started to form had deepened in the quiet of the previous night. Elijah opened the gate. "Take her to the hill. Let her show you what freedom looks like when you're not running from it." Rex rode slowly at first. Every movement of Mercy's muscles beneath him was a foreign language, a rhythm he didn't yet speak. But she was patient, just like Elijah. Her gait was smooth, strong. Together, they crossed the open field, the wind whipping through Rex's hair, the sun warming his face. He didn't feel fear anymore. He felt small. In the best way. When they reached the hill, he dismounted and let her graze. From up there, he could see the road he'd come from, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the landscape, the place he'd always run to, and from. He sat in the grass, running a hand through it, watching Mercy breathe, the way her flanks moved like bellows. A memory surfaced, a time before the roar of engines and the bite of fists. He was 7, lying in a field beside his mother, watching clouds. She had pointed at one and said, "That one looks like a horse." He had laughed and said, "No, it looks like a bike." She'd smiled and said, "Maybe it's both. Maybe you don't have to choose." He hadn't remembered that in decades. That evening, they shared stew Elijah had simmered all afternoon. It was simple, hearty, real. The fire crackled. Stars blinked open above. "Why'd you stay here?" Rex asked. "Why not go back to the world?" Elijah smiled, stirring the fire with a stick. "Because this is the world. The part most people forgot. The part where things still mean something. Out there," he gestured vaguely. "Folks are too loud to hear what matters." Rex nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that noise." Elijah leaned in. "But now you've heard the quiet. What are you going to do with it?" Rex looked over at Mercy, who lay in the paddock beneath a tree, her shape a silhouette in the moonlight. Then he looked at his bike. The machine still called to him. But now, so did the soil, the stars, the stories. Maybe the ride wasn't just through states and highways. Maybe it was into himself. That night, Rex didn't sleep. The sky above stretched endlessly, stars spinning like a great wheel. Each spark reminded him of the ones he'd lost, faces blurred by time, but not forgotten. Old brothers from the club, lovers he couldn't hold on to, the mother who never saw him grow into a man, and his father, of course, the old rodeo rider with fire in his chest and recklessness in his blood. He remembered the crash like it was yesterday, the way the crowd screamed, the sound of bone and dust, his mother holding him back as he kicked and cried, and the horse, eyes wild with pain and fear, vanishing into the chaos. He thought he'd buried that moment under miles of blacktop and noise. But Mercy's calm presence and Elijah's quiet wisdom unearthed it. And now, it sat on his chest like a stone. In the dark, he stood and walked to the paddock. Mercy stood up when she saw him, ears pricking forward. He stepped inside without hesitation. "You're not him," he whispered, brushing her neck. "And I'm not that boy anymore." She leaned into his touch, and something broke free inside him. The next morning, Elijah found Rex sitting cross-legged in the paddock with Mercy beside him, both bathed in golden light. "Didn't figure you for a sunrise man," Elijah said, offering a fresh mug of coffee. "Didn't figure I'd stay longer than a day," Rex replied, taking the cup. Elijah sat beside him. "The ones who stay are the ones who needed to." Rex nodded. Then, after a pause, he said, "I used to think strength was in the fight, that proving I wasn't afraid made me a man." Elijah looked at him, saying nothing. "But this," Rex continued, gesturing to the quiet morning, the horse, the sky, "this takes more strength than swinging fists or twisting throttles." Elijah chuckled. "Wisdom don't always come loud. Sometimes it just waits." That day, Rex worked harder than he had in years. He repaired part of the corral fence, dug a new trench for water runoff, helped Elijah clean out the barn loft. His muscles ached, but it wasn't the ache of violence or adrenaline. It was earned, honest. When evening came, he led Mercy out again. No saddle, no reins, just trust. They walked together, man and horse, across the field. The clouds above had turned a burnished orange, like the coals of a dying fire. Birds wheeled and called to one another overhead. Rex felt whole. As they reached the same hilltop from the day before, he looked down at the road. The Harley was still there. His cut, the leather vest with the Steel Saints patch, still hung on the bike's handle. "I used to think that was my skin," he murmured. Mercy stood beside him, quiet as the sky. "But it's just a shell, isn't it? Something I wore, so I didn't have to feel what was underneath." He knelt and laid a hand on the earth. "I think I've been angry at God my whole life," he admitted aloud, "for taking him, for leaving me with nothing but noise." The wind answered in a low rustle through the grass. He closed his eyes. For the first time, he didn't try to fight it. He just listened. Later that night, Elijah handed him a small leather-bound book. "It's a Bible," he said. "Was my father's. Never pushed it on anyone. Not my way. But I figure you've seen enough to want your own answers now." Rex took it, turning it over in his hands. The leather was worn soft with age. The corners bent. A bookmark stuck out halfway through. Psalm 23. "I ain't no preacher," Rex muttered. "Don't have to be," Elijah said. "Just gotta be willing to walk through the valley." Rex looked at the fire, then at Mercy, then at the stars. He wasn't sure where he was going next, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to find out. 3 days passed in quiet rhythm. Each morning began with coffee and chores. Each evening ended in stillness beneath a blanket of stars. The bond between Rex and Mercy deepened with each touch, each shared breath. He had started reading the Bible Elijah gave him, not in long stretches, but a verse here and there, usually before dawn. Psalm 23 had become a kind of echo in his head. But peace, as Rex knew, rarely lasted without test. On the 4th morning, the rumble of engines shattered the quiet. Not just one, 3, low and mean, cutting through the hills like thunderclaps. Rex stood from his seat on the porch and narrowed his eyes. Elijah didn't rise. He just set down his coffee. "You know those sounds better than I do." Rex nodded. "Steel Saints." A cloud of dust rose on the long dirt road leading to the farmhouse. 3 bikes pulled up, matte black hogs covered in road grime, chrome gleaming like fangs. The riders dismounted, vultures in leather. The lead rider was lean, bald, with a goatee that jutted like a blade. Rex recognized him instantly. "Cain," he muttered. Cain grinned, spreading his arms as if they were old friends. "Well, well, if it ain't the prodigal son." Rex didn't move. "What are you doing here?" "We've been riding a trail of whispers, brother. Heard you went soft. Heard you traded steel for hooves. Had to see it to believe it." Cain circled slowly, taking in the barn, the field, the horse. His lip curled with disdain. "This your penance, Rex? Playing cowboy. Figured if you were gonna lay low, it'd be with a bottle or a body. But a horse." He laughed, and the others joined in. Rex didn't flinch. "I didn't ask you here. And I'm not coming back." Cain's smile turned sharp. "That ain't what I heard. Word is the Saints need you. Bad. Things are unraveling without you. You were the backbone, Rex. And bones don't walk away. I'm done bleeding for men who don't know what they're fighting for." Cain stepped closer. "Then bleed for me." The thread hung in the air like a blade. Elijah finally stood, calm but firm. "This is a place of peace. You came with noise. Leave with silence." Cain turned, eyeing the old man. "You the prophet or the shepherd?" "Neither," Elijah said. "Just someone who's seen what happens when men chase thunder and forget the rain." Cain laughed, but there was no humor in it. He turned to Rex. "You got till tomorrow. I don't care if you ride with us or stand in our way. But you're part of this story, whether you want to be or not." Then he and his riders kicked up dust and vanished down the road. That night, Rex sat by the fire with the Bible in his lap. "What would you do?" he asked Elijah. The old man didn't answer immediately. He tossed a pine log onto the fire, sparks flying. What's right ain't always what's safe, and what's good ain't always clean. But truth don't bend. Rex nodded. "I ain't afraid of them." "No," Elijah said. "But are you afraid of who you were with them?" Rex looked toward the barn, where Mercy stood in the shadows. "I was death on two wheels. I knew how to hurt and how to hide. But here, I'm learning how to feel, how to build." "Then the question is," Elijah said, "what are you willing to protect it with?" Rex looked at his hands. The knuckles were scarred, but no longer bloodied. He ran his fingers across Psalm 23. "I walk through the valley, not run through it." Elijah smiled. "Then don't run tomorrow. Stand." Dawn broke not with birdsong, but with the low clatter of hooves and boots. Rex had risen long before the sun, standing at the edge of the paddock where Mercy waited. The air was cool, filled with dew and silence. Today wouldn't end quietly. He dressed differently, not in leathers, but in jeans worn from work, boots caked with honest dirt, a plain white tee that clung to his frame. No patch, no colors, just Rex. Elijah met him at the gate. "You sure about this?" "I won't strike first," Rex said, "but I won't bow either." Elijah nodded. "Then go knowing you've already changed the road ahead." Rex saddled Mercy for the first time. She didn't flinch, didn't shy. She stood like she knew what was coming, that today was different. When he mounted, it was like a new skin settled over his bones. Not the biker, not the boy at the rodeo, but a man reborn of both. He rode out to the hill where the dirt road coiled like a serpent toward the horizon. Cain was already waiting, flanked by his two goons, lounging on their bikes like they were thrones. Cain squinted against the rising sun. "Didn't expect you to ride in on a damn horse." Rex halted 10 feet from him. Mercy pawed the ground once and stilled. "Didn't expect to still care what you think," Rex said. "But here we are." Cain's jaw twitched. "We were brothers." "We were wolves," Rex corrected. "And wolves don't build, they consume. I was one of you, Cain. I burned down half the map trying to prove something. But I found something better." Cain barked a bitter laugh. "Better? You've been brainwashed by that old preacher and his glue factory nag." Rex's voice dropped. "That nag knows more about loyalty than any man you ever rode with. She doesn't need fear to be strong. She doesn't need scars to be proud." Cain dismounted, his boots crunching the gravel. "So this is it? You stand with dirt and grace? You turn your back on the saints?" "I turn my back on the blood, not the men. If you want to walk away, Cain, I won't stop you. But if you step toward this land, this peace, you'll meet the storm I buried to keep it." Silence, the kind that tightens the air like a drum. Cain stared long and hard. Something flickered in his eyes, not fear, but recognition. He saw it now. Rex wasn't bluffing. Cain's hand twitched toward his belt. Rex didn't move, didn't blink. Mercy stomped the earth once. Cain's fingers curled, then fell away. "I hope your little dream survives the real world," he muttered, backing toward his bike. "But I ain't your ghost to bury, Rex. We'll see each other again." "Maybe," Rex said, "but not here." Cain revved the engine, then peeled away in a spray of dust. The others followed, their thunder fading like a storm turned aside. Rex sat in the saddle long after the dust settled. Not as a threat, not as a warning, as a sentinel, a guardian of something sacred. He turned Mercy back toward the farmhouse, toward Elijah, toward the soil that remembered every hoof print, every seed, every drop of sweat. Psalm 23 still echoed in his head, but another line now walked with him. "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe more storms, maybe more ghosts. But today he had stood, and today that was enough. A week passed since Cain had left in a cloud of dust. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. But something had shifted. Word traveled in strange ways through rural places. First it was a rancher who stopped by the fence asking about the man on the horse. Then a mother and her son from the next property over, curious about Elijah's land suddenly looking more kept. They brought bread, asked no questions, but left with respect in their eyes. And so it began. Rex found himself repairing fences, not for pay, but because they needed fixing. He showed a local boy how to brush a horse without spooking her. He pulled a truck out of a ditch with mercy and an old tow chain. Each small act echoed louder than engines ever did. The community, long skeptical of strangers, began to nod when they passed him. Not everyone was friendly. A few old-timers still crossed the street at the sight of his tattoos or leather gloves. But they no longer looked through him. He was becoming real to them. One Sunday, Elijah asked if he'd ride with him into town. Rex hesitated. He hadn't stepped foot inside a church since he was a child. His last memory of one was knuckles clenched in prayer for a father who never came home. But Elijah didn't pressure. "I'm not asking you to believe what I do," the old man said, "only to see what it means to others." So Rex rode mercy while Elijah drove his rusted pickup. They reached a white chapel with flaking paint and a cracked bell that still rang like morning rain. Inside, no one stared too long. No one asked too much. The sermon was about Lazarus, about being called out of death, out of a cave. Rex felt something deep move. Not faith, not yet, but recognition. After the service, a girl with Down syndrome ran up and handed him a flower. Her name was Abby. She said Mercy looked like an angel. He smiled, awkward and soft. "Can I ride her?" she asked. He looked to Elijah, who nodded. Rex lifted Abby into the saddle and walked Mercy gently in a circle. Her laughter made something bloom in his chest he didn't know he still had. "You're good with people," Elijah said that night. "No," Rex replied, staring into the fire. "I'm just trying not to be bad." That's where good begins. That same week, a notice went up in the post office. A volunteer was needed to help rebuild the town's old stable, torn down in a storm. No pay, just labor. Rex signed his name. At first, no one else did. But by the next day, 3 others joined. One of them was a woman named Maria, strong, quiet, a vet tech who knew more about horses than anyone Rex had ever met. They worked side by side for hours, without needing words. The way she moved around animals reminded him of Mercy, calm, grounded. She offered him a cold drink and said, "People are watching you." "I'm used to that." "No," she said, meeting his eyes. "Not like before. They're watching you because you're changing something." He didn't reply, but the weight of her words stayed with him. That night, he sat under the stars, Mercy beside him, her breath slow and steady. He thought of Cain, of the road he might have still been on, of the ghosts who rode with him. And then he thought of Abby, of Maria, of the stable rising from ruin, of a town learning to trust him. The road still called to him sometimes, in dreams, in thunder, in the wind across the fields. But now he knew something he hadn't before. Roots were as powerful as wheels. He didn't need to run. He just needed to keep building. It was a quiet afternoon when the past came knocking again. Rex was helping Maria tend to a colt born 2 days too early, when Elijah waved him over with a furrowed brow and a letter in his hand. No stamp, no envelope, just grease-stained paper folded twice and left at the edge of the fence. Rex took it, unfolded it slowly. "Need your help. Real bad. Not for me, for Jamie. You remember Jamie? Cain's little brother. They're in deep. Can't go to the law. If you're the man they say you are now, show me. Silas. The name hit harder than expected. Silas had ridden with Rex once. A tough old coot with busted fingers and a good poker face. If he was reaching out, things were worse than bad. Rex didn't speak right away. He just stared at the paper, then the horizon. Elijah finally asked, "What will you do?" Rex folded the letter again, tighter this time. "I don't know." That night, he couldn't sleep. Mercy paced outside the barn, restless as if she knew something pulled at him. The wind carried no answers, only the scent of rain. Maria found him near the paddock, leaning against the gate. "You look like a man tied to two wagons," she said. "I feel like one." She didn't pry. Do what you have to do. But remember, not all roads can be ridden twice. The next morning, Rex packed a small satchel. Not a bag for war, no guns, no chains, no cut. Just a few supplies, a map, and an old photo of himself and Jamie before the leather, before the scars. They'd been kids then, trying to be wolves in a world already full of hunters. He saddled Mercy slowly. Elijah approached and placed something into Rex's palm. A wooden cross. "Not for protection," he said. "Just a reminder." Rex nodded. He rode out not as a saint, not as a savior, but as a man answering a cry for help. The road was long and empty, filled with ghosts. He passed a gas station where he once fought 3 men over a lost bet. It was boarded up now. He passed a tree with initials carved deep into it. His and Cain's, long ago when they were bloodbound and blind. The place Silas mentioned was an old auto shop at the edge of a forgotten town. Windows shattered, sign rusted, but he saw the flicker of movement inside. He dismounted and tied Mercy to a pole. She neighed once, uneasy. Inside, it smelled like oil and desperation. Silas sat near a tool chest, holding his side. Blood soaked through his shirt. Across from him, tied and beaten, was Jamie, older, bruised, but very much alive. "They're coming back," Silas rasped. "Cain sent them. Jamie tried to break away, tried to walk clean. But you know how the past pulls." Rex crouched beside him. "Why didn't you run?" "I ran for too long. Had to make a stand somewhere." Outside, engines roared. Rex stood and cracked his knuckles. "Then let's make it here." The fight was short and savage. Rex didn't use bullets, just fists, chains, and the fire that used to fuel every bad thing he'd done. But this time, it was for something else. When the dust settled, 2 men lay groaning on the concrete. One ran. Jamie was free. Silas, barely conscious, smiled through bloodied lips. "You still hit like a freight train." Rex hauled them into the truck parked out back and drove them to a safe spot 2 counties over, a horse farm run by a woman Elijah once knew. Then he returned. 3 days later, he rode back into town. Mercy was tired. So was he. But as he approached the chapel, Abby came running again. "You're back." He dismounted, caught her in one arm. "I am," he said. "For good." Maria stood in the door of the stable, arms crossed. "Decide which wagon you're tied to." Rex smiled, faint but sure. "I did." And for the first time, the road didn't pull. It welcomed him home. Summer came late that year, and it came heavy. Rain swelled the creek beyond its banks. The parched ground, cracked from years of drought, couldn't drink fast enough. When the dam upstream cracked one Sunday morning, no one saw it coming. Rex was in the chapel when the first screams rose. "Elijah!" someone yelled. "The water's rising." In seconds, people were outside, looking east. The horizon shimmered not with heat, but with movement, a wall of mud and water carving its way through the lowland pastures, dragging fences, tree limbs, even a tractor behind it. Mercy was already pacing. Rex threw his jacket on, his body moving faster than his thoughts. Elijah grabbed the keys to the church van, but Rex shook his head. Too slow. I'll ride. I can reach the Miller place before it hits. Maria was already loading animals into trailers. She shouted over the noise. There's a pregnant mare at the old stable. No one's gotten her. Rex didn't answer. He mounted Mercy bareback, kicked hard, and they thundered into the rising wind. The storm had no mercy. The fields were a brown blur. Rain came in sheets, but Rex knew the land now. He knew every dip and bend. And Mercy ran like the earth itself begged her to. He reached the Miller place, just as the water caught the barn's edge. He hauled 2 kids onto Mercy's back and pointed to the hill. Ride her up. She'll find the high ground. He didn't wait. He ran into the house. The father had fallen, leg pinned by a fallen beam. Rex lifted it with a groan that cracked his spine and carried the man out with the water licking at their heels. When he stumbled into the field again, Mercy returned. Alone. Wet, but steady. He hoisted the man onto her back. Go, he shouted. She turned and galloped. Back at town, the flood hit the outskirts. Mud rolled into basements. A propane tank went up in fire. Rex saw it all as he waded waist-deep to the stable. The mare was screaming. Water to her belly. Rex wrapped a lead around her neck. I got you, he whispered. She bucked, terrified. He didn't let go. He pulled, cursed, pleaded. At one point, he fell beneath the water. Cold darkness. Then hooves. Then air again. Maria appeared out of nowhere, face cut, eyes wild. Move, she screamed, slapping the mare's flank. Together, they got her out. They led her uphill, the town glowing behind them with firelight and fear. By dawn, the rain slowed. The creek receded. Homes were lost, but lives were saved. In the chapel, soaked and exhausted, Rex sat with Elijah. You led them, Elijah said. No, Rex whispered. They followed the horse. Maybe, but they trusted the man on her back. That afternoon, the town held a gathering. Maria, wrapped in a blanket, stood beside Rex. Abby gave him a ribbon she'd found, blue, with gold trim. For bravery, she said. He laughed, the sound raspy. I don't need medals. It's not a medal, she said. It's a promise. You're one of us. He took it, tied it around Mercy's reins. The chapel bell rang again. Not for prayer, not for warning, but to say we made it. The storm came suddenly. It wasn't just rain. It was the kind of storm that split the sky in two and drowned the earth beneath. The river that ran past the town swelled quickly, breaking its banks and spilling over the roads. The warning came too late for many, and within hours, the main street was underwater. Rex had been sitting on the porch of the farmhouse, Mercy grazing nearby, when the first thunderclap shook the air. Elijah was the first to call. Subscribe and like if you want to see more videos like this. They need you. The levees are gonna break. People are trapped. Can't get to the main road. Rex didn't hesitate. He gathered his things, told Maria he'd be back soon, and took Mercy out of the paddock. As he mounted, he felt the familiar weight of the wooden cross in his pocket, a reminder that his journey had never been just about himself. The town was barely recognizable. Water pooled up to the rooftops, and cars were abandoned in the streets, half submerged in the rising tide. People were scrambling for higher ground, but some hadn't made it yet. Rex rode through it all, guided only by the strength in his heart and the steady pace of Mercy's hooves. He reached the levee just as the first cracks appeared. The earth trembled under the pressure of the flood. People were on the far side, screaming for help, but there was no bridge. Rex looked around, then saw the old iron rail bridge half flooded, a weak point in the structure. He could see it now, ready to give way. Mercy snorted, as if she understood the danger, but Rex pressed on. He rode to the far edge of the levee and saw a group of stranded townsfolk on the other side. There was no easy way to get to them, no safe route through the water that wouldn't swallow them whole. But he knew what he had to do. "I need help," he called out, his voice rising over the sound of the storm. "We have to break the levee." One of the men nodded, seeing Rex's determination. Together, they found the weak spot, and Rex started hacking at it with a crowbar they found nearby. It was slow, hard work, and the rain made it impossible to see clearly, but he pushed through. Every strike on the levee wall was like a battle, his muscles straining against the flood, his mind focused only on the task at hand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the levee broke, and the floodwaters began to recede. The people on the other side were able to escape, rushing across the newly created gap. Mercy stood calmly beside him, though the ground was now slick and treacherous. As the last of the townsfolk made their way to safety, Rex finally allowed himself to breathe again. He didn't stay long. As quickly as the waters had come, they were already retreating. The danger was past, but the storm had left its mark. That night, Rex stayed at the church. The townsfolk had brought blankets, and the fire in the corner warmed everyone's hearts as they gathered together. There were no more words needed. Rex had proven what kind of man he had become. The next morning, the town began the long process of cleaning up the destruction. But now, Rex didn't just ride through the streets on his bike. He worked beside the people who had once feared him, offering help where it was needed, becoming more a part of the community with each passing day. Mercy, too, had become a part of their lives. Rex knew that this wasn't just a place to live. This was his home. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, Rex stood on the porch of the church, looking out over the town. The world seemed a little quieter, a little less harsh. The road no longer called to him in the same way it had before. He had come to understand that his journey was not one of escape, but of return. He looked down at the wooden cross in his hand. It wasn't just a reminder of what he had left behind. It was a symbol of what he had found. He had found peace. And for the first time in his life, he was ready to stay.